Hey guys, this is Ron and I'm going to do a lesson of the week, and this lesson by popular demand is going to be on how to handle tenant buyers when they default. What do you do with them? And this is actually a good question and one you should have a handle on before you get too deep into the art of installing lease option tenant buyers in houses. Now keep in mind this has nothing to do with axe deals, because with axe deals you're signing your lease and you're not collecting rent, so therefore you're not involved if there's a default, unless the seller calls you up and say, please can you help me, they're not making me payments. However, when you're doing a sandwich lease, or when you're buying it subject to, or when you're buying it with owner financing, and then you're installing, or paying cash, or then you're installing a lease option tenant buyer in it, then you always should be prepared for when they do not pay. Now the good news is, if you get a sizable deposit out of them, like thousands, not hundreds, your default ratio is going to be significantly, insignificant actually, and very, very small, only because they have a commitment in the house. I can tell you from hard experience, if you get very little money on the front end, you're going to have a problem later. If you get a lot of money on the front end, you're likely not going to have a problem later. Only their financial commitment into this deal will lessen your default rate. Nothing else. I don't care what their credit looks like right now, it could be bad tomorrow. However, when they got thousands of dollars at stake, they are more mentally into this transaction. Now, in addition to that, tenant buyers are responsible for doing the repairs when I sell houses to them, so they feel like owners, and I treat them like owners. You don't call an owner, a previous seller, to fix a toilet. You call a plumber, and I have that conversation with them right on the front end. So the front end conversation I have with them about who's responsible for repairs, and the fact that their agreement says they are, and that they're giving me a bunch of money up front, makes later on the problems a lot less. Now that's not to say you're never going to have a problem with a tenant buyer, because you likely are. Sooner or later someone's going to say, I'm not going to pay. So let's talk about what we're going to do in that case. Here's what I do. All of my lease option agreements have a 5-day late period, and after the 5th day there's a 10% late payment on right into them. So in other words, if they have $1,000 rent and on the 6th it comes in, they owe me $1,000 plus $100, $1,100, not $1,000. In my case, if that $1,000 comes in and it's late, we send it back saying, sorry, you got the wrong amount. Please create another check with your late penalty added to it. I train them very early that I am serious about this late penalty thing, and when I do, it's amazing how they never send the payment in late anymore. But if they do, they know that they got to send that 10% with it. Now I know that's a scary thing for you to send the whole payment back and then wonder if they're going to return it. And to be honest with you, most people will not do that. They'll hold on to the rent, deposit it, make the payment underneath, and then send them an invoice for the balance and tell them, make sure this comes in, make sure you send me this balance because your late fee is due. That's the way most people do it. When, however, you're financially capable of making that payment without collecting that rent, then you can be a little firmer and insist that the check comes in the right amount. So again, 5 days late, after 5 days late, they owe a 10% late penalty. And you'll find that's built into all of my lease option agreements already. You don't have to add it. So, rent comes in late, and it comes in without the late penalty. We send them a notice, send late penalty, and in my case, send the whole thing back. All right, now let's say that 5-day period goes by, and you haven't received the rent. Well, in this case, on day 6, we send them a 3-day notice. Now, I live in Florida. It's a 3-day notice that is required, and that 3-day notice cannot include holidays or weekends, and it shouldn't include the day you sent it. So, and we're required to send it, not deliver it. We send it by mail. We send a 3-day notice. Okay. At the end of the 3-day notice, if we haven't heard from them, then I send it right over to the attorney's office, and I tell the attorney, here they're late. Please start the eviction process. The attorney will then send them another notice and give them a few more days to pay, plus attorney's fees, plus late penalty. Now at that point, make darn sure that you do not collect the rent. Once the attorney sends out the letter, make sure the money goes back to the attorney and it's for the full amount. If you take any part of that rent, you stop that process and you got to start all over again. If you file eviction and you take any part of that rent, you've just killed your own eviction, you got to start all over again. So once you get the attorney involved, let the attorney collect the money and forward it to you and make sure that he or she gets all of it due. What you're doing here is you're training your tenant buyer that you're not in, this is not a game, that this is business. Now here's what we don't do. We do not go trucking out to the house and knocking on the door and begging for our rent. As far as I'm concerned, if they don't pay the rent on time, with an agreement that they signed in front of an attorney, carefully explained to them by me and the attorney, they're stealing from me. They're stealing from me the same as if they put a gun in my ear. When they don't pay me the rent, I got to make the underlying payment. Now, if I could pick up the telephone and tell the lender that I haven't collected rent, is it okay if I don't make the payment and I get a yes answer? Then I wouldn't be so brutal. But that ain't the way it works, and you know it. They expect me to make the payment whether I collect the rent or not. I expect my tenant to pay the rent whether it's a good day or a bad day. I expect to be at the top of the list of priorities that they pay every month, not at the bottom of the list. And I'm going to make it real clear with my actions that I am in priority position, or they can go find someplace else to live. And remember, if I evict a tenant buyer out of a house, guys and gals, they don't lose a little bit of money. They lose everything they put down. Could be $5,000, $10,000, $15,000. That's why you rarely ever have a problem with them. And when you do, you deal out of it. If they can't pay the rent, they can't pay the rent. And that's exactly what we do most of the time. It's rare that I file an eviction. It's very rare. Because usually they contact us and we say, what's the problem? They say, we can't pay the rent. Well, okay, well get out and I'll give you $1,000 of your money back and help you get your life back. And in most cases like that, I just had a guy move who gave us $15,000 on an $85,000 lease option deposit. He's in the house 7 months and he couldn't pay it anymore. So I gave him $1,500 as soon as he was out and left the house clean, and I told him, go get your life back. Come back and see me when you're ready to buy another house, and I'll work out a credit for part of the money that you lost on this house. That's a fair and right thing to do, instead of just taking the money. He knew full well he wasn't getting it back. He didn't even ask for it back because of the documents he had in his hand, and we closed with an attorney, which made it an official. And by the way, that's another very important point. When you close a lease purchase with an attorney, it's rare you're ever going to have a comeback because they know it was done properly, not some shady, under-the-table deal. They sat in an attorney's office and the attorney explained it to them and did the documentation. Also, if they were to take the documentation to their attorney and then their attorney found out that your attorney closed it, that also greatly reduces the possibility of any comeback because their attorney assumes that it was done correctly and that you didn't take advantage of their client. So in a nutshell, the rules are, rent don't come in, you get notice. Then if I don't get it, the attorney takes over, and the attorney knows to follow right on through with the eviction if you don't collect all of it. It's really that simple. Let the attorney do what attorneys do best. Paperwork and evict people, and you get out of the way. Don't go knocking on the door, take your life into your own hands to collect rent. Don't do that. We do not do that. Now we do extend the courtesy of a phone call, and if we can get them to call us back, we'll find out what the problem is. But I will not stop the eviction process because of what a tenant tells me. I don't believe anything they tell me. I believe the money's coming when I get the money. Now, how do you think I got so case hardened on that one? Guys, if you start falling for all of the excuses and the sad, sad stories, next thing you're going to know, it's going to be 2 or 3 months from now and you still haven't collected your rent and you wonder why you hadn't done it earlier. Time is not going to fix it. Decisive and prompt action is the only proper business-like thing for you to do when people don't pay you as promised. I hope that helps. Just keep buying and selling houses, put tenant buyers in them. One day you'll be as mean as I am. See you soon.